Okay, I don't have a digital copy of the worksheet, so I'm just going to have to write the problem down, so excuse kind of, how this looks. But they wanted to do, let's see, last hour wanted to do problem number 3 and then problem number 7. So I said we can do that. So we'll do 3 and 7. There's a couple small things that are new today, but not much. Not much. So we want to graph this. Is this in standard form or is it in Vertex form? Standard form. What's the direction? Is this thing going to go up or down? It goes down. It does. And the first thing I have to identify is the vertex. And in order to identify the vertex on your worksheet, I identify the A, B, and C values. What is A? -2, B, +4, and C is 1. So I've got -2, +4, and 1. So the formula for a vertex is -b divided by twice the A value. So -4 divided by -4, which is 1. Most common mistake, people write -1, they miss a negative somewhere. That's why we have multiple things that we're finding. Y-intercepts, x-intercepts, so everything in the graph should match up. A lot of people said, well, I did it correctly, but something doesn't match up. If something doesn't match up, you didn't do it correctly. Okay? So it should all come together. So if the vertex is 1 for the x value, how do I find the y value? I plug it in. 1 squared is 1 times -2 is -2. Plus 4 is 2, plus 1 is 3. I've got 3. So there we go. Next question is axis of symmetry. We can talk about this, but it's very easy. Axis of symmetry divides the parabola in half. If it's going to divide it in half, is it could be a vertical line or a horizontal line? Vertical line. The equations for vertical lines, are they x equals or y equals? X equals. Goes right through the vertex, right? So the axis of symmetry is always x equals whatever the x value of your vertex is. Always. 100% of the time. Until second semester where we graph sideways parabolas. Okay, so axis of symmetry. Now we got y-intercept. What's the y-intercept? It's always the C value. Very good, which is 1. X-intercept. That's the hard one. In order to find the x-intercept, I have to take your equation and set it equal to 0 equals -2x squared plus 4x plus 1. I have 3 ways of solving equations like this, these quadratics. What's one way you can use to solve them? Quadratic formula or factor or complete the square. And I won't complete the square for these. I will either use a quadratic formula or factor. This does not factor. You can try it. Any which way, doesn't work out. So I'll use a quadratic formula, which you've memorized. It's also on the back of your notes. -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'll write that down. So, what's -b? Plus or minus square root of, what's 4 squared? 16 minus 4 times a is -2 and c is 1. Divided by 2a will be -4. The part underneath the square root is called the, starts with a D. Rhymes with discriminant. Discriminant. So, we have -4 plus or minus. The discriminant tells us the nature of the solution. It discriminates between 2 real, 2 imaginary, or 1. So we've got the square root of 24. So I have a positive value underneath the square root. The discriminant has a positive value, so that means I have how many solutions? 2. Can you simplify the square root of 24? Yes. 2 roots of 6. Divide by -4. I look at these three pieces. Are they all divisible by the same number? I can divide them by, I'm going to divide in -2 so I can get rid of the negative. I get positive 2 plus or minus the root of 6 all over 2. Those are my questions. Minus plus, do the same thing. So when you divide this number by a negative, it's always plus or minus, so you don't have to worry about the positive or negative value of that. Good question. If you want to write minus or plus, that'd be cool. Maybe I'll give you an extra credit point. Oh, if you just had a 1 here? If you just had a 1 here, you can't divide it then. Leave it. I divided by -2. So -4 divided by -2 is positive 2. -4 divided by -2 is positive 2. And positive 2 divided by -2 is -1. But because you have both positive and negative, you don't have to list a -1 in front of here. You're still going to get a positive and negative solution. So I just write a 1 here. Does that answer your question, Grace? Okay. What's that? Can't cancel it because you don't have a 2 there. If you had a 2 in front of the square root of 6, then you could divide everything through by 2. But it's got to cancel with all parts. Otherwise, you're reducing parts, and you get your finger chopped off. I send you next door to the scary lady. Ugly lady. Sorry, no, I didn't say it. Yeah, she's not going to go back and watch it. I'm going to delete the recording. All right. Okay. Two plus or minus square root of 6 all over 2. Right? So, but I can't graph that. I have no idea what that looks like. What is 2 plus or minus square root of 6 over 2? So I take out my handy-dandy calculator, and I go to work. And a lot of people, they plug it in like this. 2 plus the square root of 6, and they divide it by 2. Why is that incorrect? You only take the square root of 6 and divide it by 2. You want to do 2 plus the square root of 6 divided by 2. So you have to insert parentheses. Got to make sure you got, and you got to have, around that part, then you got to have 2 parentheses. Okay? So now that whole thing will be divided by 2. I get 2.22. Do it again. 2 minus the square root of 6 divided by 2, and you get negative 0.22. So I could graph those. So 2.22 and negative 0.22. That's what I have. And I graph. Vertex is over 1 and up 3. A lot of people say, do you have to draw the axis to symmetry? You don't have to, but some people that don't, I had 2 people first hour got it wrong because they didn't draw it. You plug in these values, 2 plus or minus square root of 6 over 2. So I just made sure that I put my parentheses around the 2 and the square root of 6, so it divided everything, as opposed to just the square root of 6. Okay? So I tried both of those. I switched the plus and the minus. I got 2.22 and I got negative 0.22. So now that I have that, I plot the y-intercept. You can also plot the x-intercepts. And the cool thing about the axis of symmetry, if you have a point on the left side, you have one on the, everything should map on over to the other side, so you could just draw another one. Now I got 5 points, so I can make a really nice looking graph. and all my points match. I mean, it goes down just like my direction said. I check everything out. It all corresponds together. So it looks like I've done it correctly. So that one involved using quadratic formula. Some of these factor. The first one does not factor. The second one does. The fourth one does. The fifth and sixth one both do. So really only have to use quadratic formula on number 1. Okay, let's do one more. Number 7. Oh. Anybody have a Mr. Lane test today? Oh. People were scared about that last hour. So, all right. Okay, this one's different because it's in standard form, but we want to put it into vertex form. So if we want to put it into vertex form, we're going to do 2 steps. What should I do first? Take out the -2. What number do you add to complete the square? +1. -2 divided by 2 is -1. Squared is +1. True or false? The number you put here will always be positive. Anytime you square something, unless it's imaginary, you will get a positive result. And it will never be an imaginary number. So it will always be positive. But the actual value, in this case, is not +1, but you've actually subtracted 2. By adding that 1, -2 times 1 is a -2. So this side is out of balance. So you have 2 options. You subtracted 2 from this side, so you can either subtract 2 from this side or add 2 to the other side. Would you feel better? So we have the 1. So before we didn't have anything there, right? So by adding 1, the true value is -2. That's the true value of what you've done there. You've subtracted 2 from this side. So you can either write a -2 over there, which will just later on end up in resulting by adding 2. Well, it's all completed. Now we just put it in completed square form. -2 times, what does that factor down to? X minus 1 quantity squared plus 2. I've got it. What's the vertex? It's shifted horizontally how many units? 1. Vertically? 2. So the vertex is 1, 2. For these problems, I also ask you the y-intercept. Look at the problem at the beginning, you guys. Look at the problem at the beginning. What is obviously the y-intercept? 0, right? Look, you have 0 added on the end here. Here's how you find the y-intercept if you didn't have that. Do you agree that those points are both y-intercepts? What do they have in common? The x value is 0. So if you're looking at an equation like this and you're saying, what is the y-intercept? Just plug in 0 for x. What's 0 minus 1? Squared? 1 times -2 plus 2. And that matches exactly with what you have up there. You know the y-intercept is 0. The only reason I give you that is I want you to have more than one point when you plot it, because we're not finding the x-intercepts. So let's draw it. I go over 1, I go up 2, and I'll plot that. I have an axis of symmetry, it goes right down the middle. I have a y-intercept here. What could I do with that y-intercept to get another point? Yeah, just reflect it right on over here, and that way I have 3 points. Looking at the beginning, does this parabola go up or down? Down, and that matches with my shape. The last question on your worksheet is is this a min or a max? Which is it? Maximum value, what's the maximum y value? Dos! You got it. You don't have to, but first hour, some people didn't draw the axis of symmetry, and here's what they did incorrectly. They reflected, here, so they put these 2 points, and they reflected this one over the y-axis. And then their graph was incorrect. They're like, what did I do wrong? I said, well, if you drew your axis of symmetry, then you would know to reflect this one over here. So it's just a way to help prevent you from making mistakes. That's what it is. Okay? You have the rest of the hour to work. 1 and 2.